Sophie and the ARC of Emonglia. Fear's Account. Chapter Unnumbered. Fear's Worst Fear. Fear tore into the seatbelts, hands trembling, its 32 bony fingers twisted in a wormy mess around the buckles. At last free from the captivity of its sweat-soaked Turtle Cocopan seat, Fear sprung up and flung itself from the carapace into the Meadow of Contemplation. Pins and needles jabbed Fear's 3 jagged legs as it staggered for the Crossroads of Eternity teleporter through the hellhole of tall grass and relentless pollen. It had crossed the dark hall of matter with a human and her devilish canine, trapped in a chaos of angry barking, saliva, and tears. Some human, most were Fear's own. Never had Fear been so terrified, so helpless in the face of adversity. In a cruel irony of fate, forced into the ban on association with a human by its beloved safety seatbelts, which enveloped the Earthian and refused to let go, despite Fear's best attempts to jettison her from the Cocopan. Terror ripped through Fear's tormented mind in a series of skull-shattering blasts, sending aftershock tremors through its frail nervous system. Amidst the shrapnel of pain lodged in its chest cavity, Fear heard Morvin's frantic mayday calls as the Turtle Cocopan crash-landed into the meadow, barely clearing the portal and ploughing a mile-long trench in the grass by the time they'd come to a stop. The sheer horror of that experience was enough to terrify anyone, other than confusion, of course, which was still strapped in its seat, blissfully unaware of the chaos, debating with itself out loud whether the waterfowl code of conduct should be extended to the duck-billed platypus. "Blast!" Fear yelled, startled by the toga-clad gold frame of Rationality perched up against the Crossroads of Eternity signpost. "Will you quit sneaking up on me like that?" "Technically, you ran into me. It's best to look where you're going. This will give you more control of your spatial positioning," Rationality replied, matter of fact. Fear ogled the quadrilateral. "Have you no clue what's going on here? There's a human in Emonglia." Under the circumstances, Fear was lucky to still be in control of its overactive bladder. "I see that," Rationality acknowledged, composed. "How can you get all worked up about pie, but stay calm when there's a blatant ban on association that's happening right in front of you?" Fear fumed. "Irrational numbers are a personal challenge. Of all Emonglians, I thought you'd understand. You don't like numbers either," Rationality reminded. "I'm sorry," Fear spurted, realizing it had let its tongue ahead of its mind again. "I get a bad case of 3 feet in mouth disease when I stress." "Never you mind. How did you end up importing a human into Emonglia?" asked Rationality, pointing to the listless bodies of a girl and her monster canine next to the trench in the meadow. "Blast!" Fear hadn't realized the pair had fallen out of the Cocopan. Its knees buckled, a nervous tic setting into its right eye. "Have I killed them?" And importantly, did the ban on association with a human extend to accidentally bludgeoning one to death with a meadow? Rationality shook its angles, a reassuring no. "They're unconscious from the impact. You're capable of measurably reducing human lifespan after prolonged exposure, but an immediate death requires the presence of panic." Suddenly, Fear felt the all-too-familiar dagger of anxiety wedge in its chest cavity. "Where is panic?" The dripping pallor was standing right next to Rationality when Fear set off for the blasted call-out. Anything could have happened to it whilst Fear was on Earth. Naturally, Fear had assumed the worst. "Please, don't tell me you let panic wander off by itself. You know it doesn't do well alone, especially around death moths." The blasted meadow was like a minefield, full of them. "I know about the butterflies," Rationality replied. I left panic in the care of fairy godmother when I was at the council chamber talking to the other virtues. Fear winced. It wouldn't trust fairy godmother with a jar of discarded toenails, never mind one of its best aids. She's new. You know I don't like new. Can you find anyone else? Mystical creatures of unbeknownst origins belonged in fairy tale books, not in Emonglia. I didn't even look, to be honest. She volunteered as soon as I arrived to report myself to the council, Rationality admitted. "Blast infinity!" Fear yelled. In the commotion, it had forgotten all about the theft. "Have they found the Ark?" "No, not yet," Rationality replied calmly, as if the missing Ark was something trivial, like a torn sock from a multi-pair pack or a set of keys to an empty shed with a broken lock. "What are we going to do?" Fear despaired. The Ark was the single most important object in Emonglia. Emotions had gone to war over it, died for it, and much of modern Emonglia was built on the need to protect it. Without the Ark, Emonglia had no purpose and no place in the multiverse. Having discussed the particulars of the case with the other virtues, I am convinced that the augmented reality component has indeed been stolen. I remain hopeful that the canine can help us recover it. Rationality seemed unperturbed by the fact that the canine was now bundled with a human, which irrevocably implicated Fear in the ban on association, a crime punishable by exile to the dreaded Forest of Y. Cold sweat trickled down Fear's spine like a line of malevolent ants that had pillaged its brain and was scurrying away with its sanity. "Can't we just get another Ark? Send the canine and his human friend back home. Don't tell the council that Fear was responsible for smuggling them into Emonglia, and pretend none of this has ever happened." Fear crossed its 32 bony fingers and some toes for good measure, hoping Rationality would say yes. But Rationality didn't. "That's impossible. Why would you think that?" Fear dithered, reluctant to admit that it knew very little about the Ark. Following orders was easy. Probing into how things worked required a degree of courage Fear simply did not possess. "I assumed the council kept a copy," Fear mumbled. "Why would you assume that?" Rationality asked. "I thrive on assumptions. The more unsubstantiated, the better. You know that," Fear snapped. "The augmented reality component is unique. There is no copy," Rationality replied. "What?" Fear had at least a dozen blue pens, and they definitely weren't as important as the very object that gave Emonglia its purpose. "I said there is no copy," Rationality replied flatly. Fear gulped, restarted its heart, and forced its lead-heavy tongue to mutter, "Why, Forest, me going ban?" "Are you asking if you will be sent to the Forest of Y on account of the ban on association with a human?" Rationality clarified. Fear nodded, unable to get its tongue going again, then burrowed its toes into the ground for a soothing earth-to-appendage embrace. Rationality shook its top corners a no. "I will take full responsibility for this call-out. You and your aides are safe." Fear was about to indulge in a lingering exhale, then realized it would probably have to testify before the Council of Virtues, if not the highest court. "Oh, blast and blast again! Blast infinity! Will this day ever end?" it yelled. "Hate to interrupt your dramatic monologue, but the Earthians are awake," said Confusion's voice. "I dunno what the protocol is for an interdimensional abduction of a human and a canine pigeon, but we should probably offer them tea." Fear spun a semicircle, pushed the red apple-shaped tea cozy of Confusion out of the way, and peered at the Earthians. The human was awake, sat upright, muttering something under her breath. The hellhound was a few feet behind her, mercilessly mauling Morven's tail.
You should probably talk to them,
Fear stuttered to Rationality, grabbing hold of confusion.
We will stay here and whinge the flanks. Flank the wings.
Like and subscribe, or get the full book now on Amazon.